The Late Bloomer, Part 1, The Years That Slipped Away. My name is Margaret, 72 years old, and I still remember the smell of turpentine from the little art classroom in my high school. I was 16 when I fell in love with painting. The colors, the brushes, the quiet hours where time stopped. I thought I'd grow up to be an artist. I really did. But life has a way of pulling you off the canvas you think you're meant to paint. After graduation, I met James. He had the kindest eyes. He made me laugh so hard I forgot to breathe. We got married young, 21 and 23. 2 kids by the time I was 27. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And somehow, that felt like everything. For a while, I kept painting at night. After the kids were asleep, I'd sit by the kitchen table with an old lamp, the hum of the refrigerator behind me, mixing colors that only I would ever see. But diapers, bills, rent, they all needed attention too. And slowly, my brushes got dusty, my paints dried up, my dreams waited. I told myself I'd come back to it, when the kids were older, when money wasn't so tight, when there was time. But time, it turns out, isn't something you find. It's something you make. And I didn't make enough of it for myself. Years went by like pages flipping in the wind. Birthdays, report cards, arguments, laughter. Life was loud and I was grateful. But inside, a small voice whispered, "You were meant for more." Not in a greedy way, just in a way that said, "You have something beautiful inside you, and it's being forgotten." When my daughter Emily turned 18, she told me, "Mum, you should paint again." I smiled, nodded, said, "Maybe one day." But deep down, I didn't believe I could anymore. The world belongs to the young, doesn't it? James worked double shifts. I worked part-time at the library. Bills piled up, and that quiet kitchen lamp became my studio again. Not for art, but for counting coupons and worrying about groceries. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I'd open an old drawer and find a dried-out paintbrush. I'd hold it and cry, because I missed the girl I used to be. Then came the years of growing old. The kids moved out. The house got quieter. James and I grew softer, in body and in spirit. We talked more. We walked slower. We dreamed less. And yet, sometimes, when the sun would set just right on the living room wall, I'd think, maybe I could still do it. Maybe it's not too late. But then the phone would ring, or my knees would ache, and that tiny spark would fade again. I watched my children build their own lives. Emily became a teacher. David went into finance. They were doing well. They made me proud. But part of me envied them. Not their success, their courage. Because somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being brave. I told myself it was okay, that this was what a good life looked like. A warm home, a loving husband, grandkids who visit on weekends. And yet, when the nights got long and the house was still, I'd whisper into the dark, "Is it really enough?" In 2017, everything changed. James got sick. It started small, fatigue, forgetfulness. But by the time we knew what it was too late. Cancer. We fought it for 2 years. Hospitals, treatments, hope, then no hope. The night he passed away, I sat beside him, holding his hand, and whispered, "I'll be okay." But I wasn't. For months after the funeral, I wandered through our house like a ghost. Every sound echoed too loud. Every silence hurt too much. One day, Emily came over and said, "Mom, you need something." Something for yourself. I looked at her and said, "Sweetheart, I'm 70 years old." What could possibly be for me now? She smiled, walked into the attic, and came back down with an old box. My brushes, my paints, my easel. The smell hit me like a memory. She said, "Dad kept them safe all these years. He said you'd need them again." One day I cried so hard I couldn't breathe, because even after all that time, he had believed in me. That night, I set up the easel by the window. It felt like meeting an old friend again, awkward, familiar, precious. My hands trembled as I held the brush. I didn't know where to start, so I just started. One stroke, then another. It wasn't good, but it was mine. Days passed, then weeks. I painted the sky outside my window, the flowers from Emily's garden, the empty chair where James used to sit. Every painting looked like grief wrapped in colour. But it helped me breathe again. For the first time in decades, I wasn't just existing, I was living. People started noticing. Emily posted one of my paintings on her Facebook. Someone commented, "Your mum did this? She should sell her art." I laughed when she told me, "Sell it? Who would want the paintings of a 71-year-old woman who'd just started again?" But Emily insisted. She said, "You've spent your whole life giving, Mum." Maybe it's time to let the world give back. I didn't believe her. But I kept painting anyway, because for the first time since James died, it felt like I had a reason to wake up again. And that's where the change began. Slow, quiet, but real. Each brushstroke was a heartbeat, each canvas, a confession. I didn't know it yet, but that small act, picking up a brush, was about to change everything. Part 2, Finding Home Again. The next few months felt different. Mornings didn't hurt as much. I'd wake up, make tea, sit by the window, and paint whatever the light touched first. One afternoon, Emily called. A local art centre was hosting a community showcase. She begged me to send one of my pieces. I laughed. "I'm not an artist," I said, but she just smiled and replied, "Mum, you've always been one." So I did it. I wrapped one of my canvases in brown paper and dropped it off at the centre. I almost turned around twice on the way there. My heart was pounding like I'd just done something illegal. The opening night came. I nearly didn't go. But Emily showed up with her husband and the kids, all dressed up. They took my arm and said, "Come on, Grandma. Let's see your art." We walked into the gallery, and there it was, my painting. Hanging under bright lights, my name printed beneath it. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. People were standing in front of it, quietly talking. One woman was crying. She said, "It feels like someone loved and lost and learned to love again." That's when it hit me. They could feel what I had felt. Every colour, every tear, every lonely night. It was all there. And somehow, it spoke to them. That night, I sold my first painting. $200. I held the envelope in my hands and started laughing. Not because of the money, but because it finally felt real. After that, things moved faster than I expected. The art centre invited me to teach a beginner's class once a week. At first, I said no. I didn't think anyone would want to learn from an old lady. But Emily said, "They don't want perfect, Mom. They want real," so I agreed. 12 people showed up to that first class. All ages, all stories. One man said he hadn't picked up a brush in 30 years. Another woman had just retired and didn't know what to do with her time. We painted. We laughed. We shared quiet moments where no one needed to talk. It felt like building a small family out of colour and courage. A year later, something unbelievable happened. A local newspaper wrote a story about the 71-year-old woman who rediscovered her dream. They called me the late bloomer. The article went viral online. Suddenly, people from all over were writing to me. Messages like, "I thought my time had passed. You gave me hope." Or, "I'm 50 and scared to start again." Thank you for showing me it's possible. I cried reading those messages. Because for the first time, I realized my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to anyone who ever thought they were too late. By the time I turned 72, my house was full of canvases again. Emily kept teasing me. "Mom, you're running an art store out of your living room." We laughed. But she was right. I started selling online too. Not for profit, for purpose. Every painting had a piece of my heart in it. Every sale felt like giving someone a fragment of peace I had fought hard to find. And then one evening it happened. The sun was setting, soft gold spilling across the kitchen floor. The same light that once fell on unpaid bills and sleepless nights. I was cleaning my brushes when I noticed James's chair. Empty, still. I smiled. I said quietly, "You were right, love. You always said I'd find my way back." For a moment, I could almost feel him there. His warmth, his steady presence, the way he'd grin when I doubted myself. A single tear slipped down my cheek. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. Because I finally understood what he'd always tried to tell me. Success isn't measured in money or recognition. It's in the courage to begin again, no matter how much time has passed. Now, when people ask me about my success story, I just smile. I tell them it took me 70 years to paint my first real masterpiece. And that masterpiece wasn't a picture. It was my life. The laughter, the loss, the waiting, the love. All of it was part of the brushstrokes. So if you're listening to this and thinking you've run out of time, you haven't. Take whatever's left of your years and paint them boldly, because it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be.